So the Overwatch PTR just came out with a huge amount of changes, and if we look at the past, well, essentially a week or two before the next season, there's always been a PTR update that has a lot of changes that kind of gives us an idea of what's going to be happening for the next season. And essentially all the changes that I'm about to talk about will probably come through. Some of them might be changed a little bit, but again, looking at the PTR's history, I mean, these are probably almost guaranteed to come out for Season 10 Overwatch, or at least like a week or two after the Season 10 actually comes out. So I guess there you go with that. With that out of the way, let's get straight onto the changes. And before we begin, I guess I should say right here, almost all of the changes are nerfs. One of the characters did get a really nice buff, of course the HANZO rework, and I'll be talking about that later. But everyone else just got nerfs, which personally, if you've heard me in the past, I am really against. I'd rather they maybe buff a lot of the tanks that are just kind of awkward to play, mainly Reinhardt, where his kit just feels like it's still kind of buggy and it still feels like it doesn't really work. Maybe buff some of the supports like Anna that could really use some help, or some of the DPS that still is just doing really garbage. But, I mean, I guess nerfing the best does kind of bring everybody else up to them a little bit. I guess I'll leave a video down below in the description kind of going over my opinion about that a bit. But, yeah, there were quite a few changes this season, and even though a lot of them are nerfs, it still is kind of exciting because the meta is going to change quite a bit next season, I think. And today, let's talk about not just what the changes are, but really how they're going to affect the game in general. Now, the first thing right here that we're seeing in competitive Season 10 is obviously Brigitte coming out. And I honestly haven't played her way too much. I mean, when she first came out on the PTR, I played about 30 hours of that character and then stopped playing her. And in quick play, I mean, you just kind of run up, you hit him in the face. For me personally, it's just not really my style to do that. So, I haven't played her way too much. But with the new season, she's coming out. I've been practicing a ton of support for her, actually picking her up lately in the 6v6 deathmatch mode and a few other modes as well. And overall, I'm really excited for her. I think that she's going to make flankers a little bit worse because she does counter them pretty well. And she actually hurts tanks quite a bit too, which I don't think too many people have been talking about. But as well, she does work great with certain flankers because the armor just stacks so well with them. So I really can't say exactly what the meta is going to change to. Some people are saying 3 support, 3 tank if all the DPS keep getting nerfed, which could also happen. But with the Reaper May changes, I don't think that's going to happen. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming up with Brigitte, and I'm actually hoping that she does kind of shake up the meta a little bit and make it so much less of a dive meta, because of course not in every elo there's dive meta, but at least where I am, there's a lot of that stuff. Now, speaking of Brigitte though, with her coming out, even before she's come out in competitive, she's already getting a day 1 nerf. And I mean, there are a decent amount of players complaining about her, and I guess this nerf is kind of reasonable, that being that they're making some that now her shield bash is quite a bit smaller, from a 90-degree radius to a 60-degree radius, which you kind of have to look that up online if you don't know what that means. But I mean, it kind of makes sense. It was kind of annoying because sometimes as Brigitte, you'd hit some random people that you weren't even looking at because the radius was so big. So there's that. I guess it's kind of a fair-ish nerf. The problem I have with this is that they did the exact same thing, kind of, with Doomfist. They really reduced the hitbox of his best ability, and then Doomfist became almost unusable forever. I'm not saying the same thing's going to happen to Brigitte, but I really hope the same thing doesn't happen because, again, I'm excited for the character, and I kind of would have wished that they would have just waited until she was out in comp for like a week or two to check up on the stats. I mean, I guess they can look at the stats from quick play, but again, at least for me, those stats really mean almost nothing. So I don't know if you should balance the game off of that. I don't know though. There's been a decent amount of complaints about her, so it kind of makes sense that they're going to be changing that up. Now to the next character, another nerf, we have Genji here. And Genji for himself actually got his deflect nerfed, which I think was honestly a good idea because the deflect, I mean, it didn't really make any sense. A lot of people said that the hitbox just didn't fit around him, and what the nerf is that they made his deflect fit where the animation is basically. But the problem is, for me, that Genji didn't really need a nerf right now. I mean, he's not really that overpowered at all. He's not even that great at all. He's just kind of about playable, and they keep adding more and more characters that play and counter him. And with Brigitte added, that's just one more to the mix. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense to fix this problem, but I think that this was a very bad time to fix the problem. They should have probably waited until Genji was in a better meta to, nerf him down a little bit with this. And I'd say right now that they really should have added a buff to Genji somewhere if they are nerfing this so much, because this is one of those abilities that is very important for him, that is just a strong ability. And I don't know, maybe add some damage somewhere, maybe reduce the cooldown of Swift Strike by like 1 or 2 seconds, just something small to kind of make up for the small nerf. Especially in a meta where he's not that great in the first place. Again, I think he could have used at least a little bit of love with all these nerfs going around. Now, speaking of another nerf going around on another flanker, we have a Tracer nerf. And Tracer's been the golden child, never been nerfed before, and I'm actually very confused why they nerfed her now. because they had a track record of not nerfing her for 2 years. So, I mean, that was pretty impressive. I mean, a lot of the time she wasn't the most balanced character, but they had that track record. But here, they're finally going to be changing that. And what they did was that they made so that the Tracer ult now does 300 damage instead of 400 damage. And on paper, that doesn't seem like it matters too much. And honestly, I think for most players, it won't matter way too much. And here's why. Mainly why they did this nerf is to make so that Tracer was a little bit worse against tanks and that she can't one-shot tanks as much. And I think, honestly, that was probably needed because Tracer could just completely shut down Reinhardt. And speaking of that, we're probably going to be seeing more Reinhardt with this. But I think that her bomb is still going to be essentially the same power for most competitive games, because in most competitive games, Tracers are just flanking around all the time. Most Tracers don't really ever even try to bomb the tanks. They try to go, you know, bombing people in the backline more often. And this won't really change the fact that her bomb can one-shot people in the backline, because even with armor from Brigitte, the Tracer bomb's still going to be killing them. And a thing that I've heard a lot of people saying is that her bomb will no longer be able to kill people like Bastion, and mainly people like, you know, Reaper or people like Mei. But the problem is, especially with Reaper and Mei, you never wanted to bomb those characters anyway. It was a complete waste of a bomb to go for them because they could just shift out. So I really don't see the point there that she can't kill them anymore. I don't think it really matters at all. What I think does really matter is that, again, yeah, she does do a little worse versus tanks, and I think this is especially going to be bad in the esports scene. But I think overall Tracer's still going to be very strong. I mean, the rest of her kit is exactly as good. And I think I should point this out here. A lot of Tracer mains in like the majority of elos don't really hit their ults way too much anyways, and it's not really the part of their kit that you pick Tracer for. Sure, it is a nice ult to combo with other things, especially like a Zarya ult, but mainly you pick Tracer for her huge mobility, huge burst, and huge pick potential by herself. That's still there, at least for most of the cast. And yeah, I do think she did need a nerf, so this probably was an alright nerf. I honestly would have rather had something on another part of her kit, but I mean, this was probably one of the nerfs that made Tracer not less fun to play, because I think nerfing mobility or cooldowns would have made her less fun to play, while this, I mean, it is kind of just a numbers nerf, which isn't way too bad. Now, another numbers nerf that we have is the Junkrat nerf. Just continuing on this nerf train. What they did is that they made Junkrat's tire move 1 speed slower, so from 13 to 12. And in game, that just means it'll be a little bit easier to shoot the tire. It'll be a little bit easier to not die from it. And overall, Junkrat's ultimate has just been very hard to just understand where to put the speed at, because if it's too fast, it's overpowered. If it's too slow, it's useless. Overall, I think it's a cool ability, but maybe not the most balanceable one. So, I mean, I'm kind of glad that they're nerfing it the way that they are, you know, going slowly. They haven't really done that ever in the past with anything else in the game, but I hope that they can kind of learn from this Junkrat nerf and keep doing it. As well, the Junkrat did get another nerf, which is that he has his grenades a little bit smaller now. And people are saying it's about 10% smaller. It went from 0.3 to 0.2. But I'm not really sure exactly if that's how the projectiles work in this game with the math. I honestly couldn't tell you. But what you really have to know for yourself, if you're a Junkrat player, is that the projectile hitbox, when you shoot it in the air, is smaller, but the explosion size is just about the same. So it's going to be hard to get body shots. You're going to hit random people in front of you a lot less. But at the same time, the explosion and the spam damage is still going to be pretty good. I guess this is a good change because it rewards better accuracy, better play, but at the same time, I guess it also kind of rewards just spamming more and going for less body shots if you're already not that great at hitting them anyway. So take that as you will. I think this will make Junkrat a little bit worse, but overall, I think you're still going to stay at about the same strength, kind of the same thing that they did with his mine nerf. Really not going to change way too much. Most of the time, I don't think Junkrat's really hit way too many shots 1 inch away from their enemies anyway, and I guess if you are that close, it's going to be just about as easy to hit anyways. I think really at medium range, it's going to be harder to body shot now, but I don't know. Maybe that will be a big change. Overall, though, I think Junkrat still is going to be a good pick, and especially with, you know, Tracer and some other characters getting nerfed, he might even seem a little bit better. Now, finally, to some of the buffs going on, we have 2 of them. I guess I'm going to call them buffs. At least first off, we have Lucio. And with Lucio, they made so that his wall ride is supposedly a lot better now. And I've tried it a little bit on the PTR, and it does feel better. You don't fly off of things as much. You don't fall off of things as much. You can kind of go around corners more now, go around walls. And overall, his mobility has just kind of increased in that way. I mean, most really pro Lucios could play around this anyways. I think it overall just makes him easier to play, and I think we might be seeing more Lucio because now he is easier to play and to get more out of his kit. So, there you go with that. That is kind of a nice thing. Now, with that as well, they gave him a buff where his boop takes no ammo anymore. And I kind of like this buff because, I mean, it doesn't change way too much. It won't really make you get a ton more kills or anything. But I mean, there have been situations when I'm playing Lucio where I'm like, dang, do I want to get a little bit more damage out, or do I want to get the boop? Well, now I can do both. So that's kind of nice, and now you never really have to worry about not having any energy when you're hitting people off cliffs. What I should say is that, yeah, this isn't really going to change way too much again. You don't get boops every 5 seconds just because you have a little bit of extra ammo, but it is kind of a nice quality of life thing that they changed. And I guess the final thing about him is that they did slightly nerf him just in the last patch, where now he goes 2 meters per second instead of 2.5 meters per second off the wall when he jumps. So when you are jumping off the wall, it's going to be a little bit slower, a little bit easier to hit you, but I think what they're thinking is that you will be staying on the wall more now, so hopefully that'll kind of make up for it. I guess that, you know, when they were doing the testing on the PTR, they thought that moving 2.5 meters per second after jumping off the wall was a bit too strong, so yeah, they have changed that now. And finally, we have the HANZO rework, and I want to make a whole video about this because I think HANZO is going to be a very good character, and it will still be a very skill-dependent character because he does still essentially have the same primary fire and the same ultimate, but he did get some other parts of his kit changed, and here they are really quickly. First off, they made so that a scatter arrow is now called the storm arrows, and instead of being a one-shot ability that's just not very fun to play against, they made so that HANZO shoots 6 rapid arrows that deal 80 damage and that can headshot. What this means is that you can get out a lot more consistent damage, and they will be fully charged, so you can't charge them up, should mention that, but you will be able to get out a lot more consistent damage, kill tanks relatively fair, and overall be able to, I think, pop off in the enemy backline. And overall, I think that's a really cool ability that isn't way too broken, and they can easily change the numbers, because if it is too strong, I mean, they can make it just like McCree's Fan the Hammer and just reduce the damage by like 10, or buff it by 10. It shouldn't be way too hard with that. As well with this, they made so that his primary fire, the projectile moves a little bit faster now, from 85 speed to 100. Those numbers are kind of arbitrary though, and really what it means for you is that you're going to be able to hit people at further ranges a little bit easier and a little bit faster. So that's kind of nice. I'm not sure for my testing, I can't really tell if it's like you can have pinpoint accuracy all the time. Kind of feels like you aren't, but it is a little bit better than what it was. So Raxu, you're going to be doing even better than you already are, my man. Maybe it'll kind of mess him up, but I think that's also a kind of nice thing. Another thing added to HANZO during this rework is that now he can also lunge as his second jump. And while actually playing with this, it was kind of cool. You can jump forward and then jump side a little bit, and it does have a half decent movement range, but I honestly wouldn't say it's all that great. I mean, it's a thing that you can do now. It's an extra buff, it's an extra part of his kit, but it's not something that's going to make him completely overpowered. I think it's just going to kind of make so you can dodge some really basic abilities, and in a lot of cases that's probably all you need. So it was a nice thing that won't really overtune him, so I'm kind of glad about that. And the final thing about HANZO is that now his sonic arrow has a shorter cooldown, but it also has less range of the radius of the arrow. So you're going to be shooting it out more, but you're going to be seeing less with it. Probably a good idea though, because yeah, beforehand, I mean, his sonic arrow is just awkward. It was either really overpowered when you had it up, or kind of useless because it was down so often. Yeah, I think that was also a great change. And overall, I think the buffs in this patch were really good buffs, and really honestly made the game probably quite a bit funner for a lot of people. For Lucio and for HANZO players. However, I also think that they probably should have buffed more characters and made more changes, considering it is a new season. I am glad that they nerfed the best characters, I guess, but I would have honestly rather had a lot of the worst characters getting buffed, and I think that they probably should have waited to save the Mei and the Reaper buffs until this patch, because that would have made this season a lot more interesting, and maybe even the Diva buffs, I mean Diva nerfs, that would have changed a lot at once. So, I don't know. I kind of hope they do this for the next season. But overall, I think it's an average patch, and I'm pretty happy that it's coming out because I think it'll change it up a lot, especially with Brigitte. I think that is the #1 big change, just because she's such a different character, and I think a lot of people are going to be trying her out. But anyways, as always, guys, this has just been my own opinion, and if you have your own opinion, please leave that down in the comment section down below. Try to tell you about all the changes as fast as I could, kind of what they're going to do, and how you're going to have to play around them and with them, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. And if you want to see any more of these in the future about future patches, please tell me, and I'll try to do them ASAP. Anyways, as always, guys, though, thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful day.